How's it going, Ramblers? This is TJ, the Veteran Rambler, back with part 2 of my series where we talk about the Air Force's core values and my life lessons and how they shape me as a person. We're here at Ellsworth Air Force Base in the Black Hills, walking around my favorite walking path around the lakes. This is what I do during my lunches. It's a little noisy today. There's a lot going on around the base, but normally it's pretty quiet, and I like the quiet because it helps me think. I'm also trying out a new camera today. I saw the camera on the first video was a little shaky, so I was hoping this one's a little less shaky. But you know, I do like that it makes you feel like you're walking with me. You know, if you're my kids and my grandkids, what I wouldn't give to be able to walk with my grandpa when he was 40 years old and hear what he had to say. So anyway, let's get into it. Today we're talking about service. That's the second value, core value of the Air Force. And specifically, the Air Force says service before self. And the idea of service before self is that you set aside your own selfish wants and needs for the service that you've committed yourself to. You know, in the Air Force, that's a service to your country. And usually it was a justification to get you to spend more time or work harder to get the mission complete. You know, in our missions, they were important. So we understood that, and we understood what we stood up for. But in my life, I don't think I really had a value of service before the military. Matter of fact, the military was the first real service commitment I've ever made. But it helped me develop myself as a person to really value what service is. So when you think of service before self, not really how the Air Force looks at it, but how I started to look at it, I had to really think about why I put serving others ahead of my own wants, my own needs. Why sacrifice myself for service of others? You know, one of my favorite lines in scripture was this, and I'll put it up on the screen here, but in John, it says, love knows no greater man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. And to me, at first when I read that, I thought about Jesus, the sacrifice he made for everybody. So I thought it meant, you know, laying down your life physically, dying for your friends. In the military, that's, you know, we kind of cling to that we would do everything. We would lay down our life if that's what it took for our country, for those that are serving beside us, that we work day in and day out with. But as I grew in my faith and maturity, I learned that it doesn't have to mean dying, laying down your life. You can lay down your life daily, right? In the things that you do, as long as you're putting your wants, your needs, whatever you're doing aside for others. It's so, to me, that means it's a life of servitude, right? Love is serving others. And so I think one of the things that I thought about when I started realizing that you didn't have to physically lay down your life for others, but you could be there when they have a time of need. And to me, that was true friendship, right? You know, if your friend who you care deeply about called you at 2 o'clock in the morning and they were 2 hours away and couldn't safely make it home, you would drop everything to go pick them up. You know, if your friend got into a fight or was in trouble, you were right there along with them. So laying down your own needs and your wants, your desires, whatever you're doing at the time to serve others, is laying down your life for a friend, that is laying down your life for your neighbor. And I think that's what that passage really means. I think that's what service before self is love, right? There are people that are less fortunate than you, no matter where you're coming from. There's always somebody that has it worse than you do at that moment. And if every day you're presented opportunities to do something good, to change the trajectory of somebody's life, well, you should do it. Put down whatever you're doing, put it aside and do it. So, you know, I on the surface you think, okay, well, I'll serve at a soup kitchen, I'll serve at a, you know, I'll go and I'll raise money for this thing now and then, but that's not really a life of servitude, right? You know, I think going out of your way to intentionally serve others is important, but in the day-to-day, I think you also have opportunities to live a life of servitude just in the opportunities that are presented to you, you know? So how often do you stop and push somebody out of a ditch if they are stranded in the winter? How often do you walk by somebody struggling with their wheelchair rather than getting out and helping, you know? And I think what I've learned to do is to try to reduce or make my reaction immediate to where I want to help others. I realize that, you know, that God puts opportunities in front of you every day for you to do the right thing. And it's up to you to take that opportunity or not. So, you know, to deny that opportunity, to turn that down is really to turn down the opportunities that God's given you to serve, to love, right? So, and the more you take up those opportunities to love others, to do right, I think the stronger it makes you as a person, right? You know, and it goes back to that integrity. You know, it builds up your integrity when you take those opportunities to do the right thing, and also when you turn down the opportunities to do the wrong thing, right? So that's that before self, you know, before your own selfish needs and desires, you think about others, right? So that's service before self. And I think what it reminds me of is when I first made the decision to join the military. I mean, it wasn't my first option. I didn't even think I would ever do it. I graduated high school in a Marine town, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. It was not in it wasn't my vision of who I wanted to be, right? Marines were jarheads. A lot of times they caused more trouble than the good I saw them doing. And then, you know, they were, a lot of times that, you know, you would find they were going after our high school girls, you know, which was kind of weird to me. But, you know, when I left high school, I thought, okay, I don't really have the means to go to school. I want to be an architect. What I'll do is I'll work for a little while and I'll go to community college. I'll work my way up. And that was my plan, but God had other plans. And, you know, I was finding it hard just to make my lot rent, just have gas money to make it to work and back. I was donating plasma to get more gas money. I was eating, you know, from a food pantry. I had to get my supplemental food from there. There was holes in my single wide trailer roof, and that, you know, that wasn't the life I was picturing. And I didn't want to fail, but I had limited options, right? So then at the same time, we were going to war with Iraq, and I thought to myself, well, if life is working out the way I wanted it to, at least I could stand up for what's right, you know, and I could go into the service. And that is what makes me think about, you know, going back to that service before self. That's what makes me think about it, because my own needs, my own desires were that I was going to become a successful architect. But the needs of the country at the time was that we have men and women that were capable step up and go to war, you know. And then I think about responsibility, you know, and I didn't take much responsibility growing up, but it's something that I wanted to do as a man. I wanted to be more responsible. And I know this isn't how the word's designed, but when I think about responsibility, I think about, do I have the ability to respond? You know, do I have the ability to do the right thing? And if I do, well, then I have the responsibility to do it. So that was it. That's what made me join. I didn't realize all the opportunities that was going to come with that. And I think God understood, you know, and that's why the plan, his plan, was for me to grow as a man, sacrifice what I wanted to do, join the military, and, you know, honestly, it turned out better than I ever could have thought, you know. So I think that helps me trust, you know, that while it may not be what I want to do, it's the right thing to do, and if I do the right thing, things are going to turn out really well. So service before self became something that I truly incorporated into my character. Matter of fact, sometimes to my own detriment, I think I overreach myself in the service I try to give to others. But I feel like I can sleep at night, you know, knowing that I do the right thing when presented with the opportunity, and I take responsibility, and then I put others' needs before my own. So for my kids, you know, and anyone listening, I know it's tough sometimes to make that decision between what you want and what you should be doing, sacrificing your wants and needs for those that just don't have the ability. And even though that's a hard choice to make, you have to trust that in the end, it's the right thing to do, and it's going to lead to a life and a path that, you know, that it's well beyond what you imagine for yourself. So that's my thoughts on service before self, how it's developed me as a person. And next time we're going to talk about excellence in all we do. So until then, keep on rambling.